Welcome to the podcast where together, every Monday, we explore hospitality in its very broadest sense. From culture and cooking, cocktails and coffee, nutrition and farming, politics and animal welfare, organic and sustainability, family and business, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. Come and learn with me, Mark Cribb, about where our food and our drink comes from, and the businesses and, more importantly, the human beings that thrive on where we decide to spend our time and our money. Sign up to our weekly newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. Welcome back. Hope you all had a lovely, albeit probably quiet Christmas and New Year. And here we are with the first podcast of 2021, and what I certainly hope will be a much calmer and more predictable year than the last. But it doesn't look like that is going to be the case for the next few months, I guess. But this week I'm chatting to Richard Ball, who is the executive chairman of the Calcot Collection. And I'll let Richard do the full introduction to these, but in essence, a small collection of a manor house hotel, a restaurant, a pub, and a couple of smaller hotels, predominantly dotted around the Cotswolds. And I was really keen to chat to Richard, in the main because a number of people have recommended him as a great human of hospitality, with a wealth of knowledge and a great perspective of business, hospitality, people, and all the great stuff about our sector that I love. I particularly enjoyed Richard's story, since he's really built the collection that he chairs over a significant period of time. In fact, getting on towards 40 years. I often hope that these podcasts will appeal not just to the people who have perhaps worked in hospitality for some time and are interested in hearing about their peers and what they are up to and gleaning any useful nuggets of wisdom from our shared experiences, but I hope it will also inspire future hospitality humans to feel that this is a sector and an industry that should be more than a job for them too. A vocation and a life's adventure surrounded by human beings and humanity often at its best, in a way that can lead to an interesting and rewarding life. Now, the fact that Richard started his business with his dad and his family, and he recognises all that his family risked, even selling grandma's house to purchase a rundown manor, covered in vines and a somewhat dilapidated air. The fact that they started small with only 7 bedrooms, but had a vision and a yearning to create something and to look after people. That the journey was tough in those earlier years. He very nearly lost it all before the adventure had even really properly started. But how somehow the stars aligned, and through working hard and never losing sight of the vision, and in many ways fulfilling his destiny, through partnership, investment, continual improvement, and not being in a hurry to expand, Richard and his team have created something beautiful. Regular listeners will know that I have a love of the independent side of the sector. What Richard has created would not be of interest to the global brands of the world. It's too small and eclectic and complicated and challenging to run. A number of properties, arguably with not enough rooms to make operations easier in the traditional sense of operating hotels and restaurants. But the properties look stunning, and it takes people like Richard to create and operate such miniature beauties. I hope his story, along with those of the likes of Robin Hudson and Gerard Bassett, sleeping on the sofa in the bar because they could not afford to employ people overnight, will inspire others to know that you don't have to start a business with unlimited resources to invest. Now, during the conversation, we touch on things like rewilding land and the benefit of naivety, 18% mortgage rates, the dangers of Michelin stars, running venues as satellites, wider challenges and opportunities for the sector in 2021, and our mutual hope that people will strive for a more simple, perhaps less luxurious life, where time with other humans is the greatest priority over and above material items. Enjoy the show, and if you do, please remember to rate and subscribe on your podcast player of choice to keep up to date with future releases. And for show notes and links to some of the other things that we discuss in the show, such as the charter from Sally Beck, please sign up for the weekly newsletter via www.humansofhospitality.co.uk. Okay, enjoy the show. Richard Ball, Executive Chairman of the Calcot Collection, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Really appreciate you sparing the time. Alas, we are not face-to-face because of the modern COVID world we live in, but can you just explain to people listening, where in the world are you, please, Richard?
Oh, well, yeah, thanks, Mark, and thanks for giving me the opportunity. Well, I'm at home in my office in Bath. All our hotels are closed now. So I'm based at home here in Bath.
Okay, nice. Yeah, home office. And your venues, they're all fairly close with each other. How far away are they from you?
Well, the majority are all in the South Cotswolds, which is about a 45-minute drive from me, which is about perfect. It's a lovely drive to work every morning, and a very relaxing wind down drive home. We have another one all the way up in the beautiful North Pennine Hills, but that's another story, and that's a longer journey. And alas, I don't get there too often, maybe once a month, but
Okay.
that gets me out of the area.
What's that one called?
That's called the Lord Crew Arms.
Ah, yeah. Okay, cool. I did see
Actually,
it.
there's two Lord Crew Arms. I should make that very clear. Both very close to each other, believe it or not. And we're the one in the village of Blanchland, not the other one.
Okay. Are they both
Mm.
good?
Well, let's say the one in Blanchland has a certain something.
Okay, perfect. So, really, excited to chat up. You're a genuine. I know you're a genuine sort of human of hospitality, Richard, because you were very kindly, sort of insisting that I came up to see you in person, and I was going to stay in the hotel and have a good chat, which was really kind of you. But you've worked in the industry for multiple decades. You and your businesses have won lots of awards. You've got a great reputation for working in the sector through sort of master inn holders, Pride of Britain hotels, and all sorts of other roles. So it's really good to finally chat. But just to finish that bit off, the Calcot Collection, lots of people won't have heard of it. Can you just explain what that is? How many venues are there?
Yeah, well, we've got four principal hotels. The first one, if you like, the mothership is Calcot. It used to be known as Calcot Manor. We dropped the manor a few years ago for reasons that are probably obvious to most people. But Calcot is our mothership with 35 bedrooms, two restaurants, a beautiful spa with a membership, and some a barn with event facilities in, and so on and so forth. We have Barnsley House, which is 20 minutes from there, near the town of Cirencester, which is an 18-bedroomed hotel, beautiful hotel set in very historic gardens. And adjoining that, almost really, just across the road, is a third unit called the Village Pub, which is really run under the same management, but that's got 6 bedrooms and is exactly what it says in the tin. It's a wonderful village pub which nestles very nicely alongside a luxury country house hotel. It's a lovely combination. And then we have another hotel within the same region, another 20 minutes away, um, in the Cotswolds, called the Painswick, which is in the village of Painswick. And that's a smaller unit. It's got 17 rooms, and we opened that as our kind of cool cousin, if you like. It's a little less expensive. We tried to make it very cool. It's very informal, and trying to hit a younger age group, if you like. And then finally, we have the Lord Crew Arms, which is a little bit bigger, 21 bedrooms. It's in a really historic and beautiful village, right in the middle of the North Pennine Moors, called Blanchland, and that has 21 rooms. It's got a pub feel to it, but it's very much a hotel, and it's very special, very romantic.
Yeah, amazing. They all look stunning. It was interesting actually. I was on your website yesterday having a little look around, and I was on the Painswick website and thought, oh, that looks really lovely. For some reason, it sort of stood out, and then I read that it was for your sort of your younger clientele. So can I just ask, what age is that, please, Richard? I just want to know
Well,
if I should feel better or.
yeah. Well, it's actually very interesting. But certainly, when we bought it, we positioned it that way. We positioned it to aim at a kind of 30s type market, um,
Mm,
and we've had a certain amount of success there. We've certainly grown that age group quite a lot. But to be honest with you, it does attract all age groups. It's very
okay.
multi generational, which is
Yeah.
nice. It hasn't gone young to the extent where it excludes other age groups.
That's
So
good to hear because I
yeah,
thought it looked lovely. I'm 45, and I was kind of hoping you were going to go that was young,
yeah.
but I didn't feel young reading it, but I felt young because I liked it. But
I think we pitched it perfectly at Mark Crib. Actually, you'd love it.
It looked really lovely. So the original building, incredibly rich heritage dating back to the 1300s. It belonged to the church, and I think it was Henry VIII acquired it and in essence gave it away. Is that sort of rich history? Is that still apparent? Do you feel a sense of responsibility as the current custodians of that building? Is it an obviously historic place?
Well, to be honest with you, no. I think I mean, history is clearly very important. It isn't a building which shouts at you, history and huge heritage when you see it. It's actually a really charming collection of farm buildings that really owe more to the kind of 18th century than anything else. We have kind of set our kind of historical story, if you like, around a very old barn which sits on the site, which we know definitely did belong to the Kingswood Abbey, and we've still got the inscription stone which tells it was built in 1311. So that's our little bit of ancient history, but most of it really is, as I say, a beautiful and charming farm in a typical Cotswold style. I think if we'd opened it now, we would probably have called it a Calcot Farm. We'd have been far more honest. But back in the 80s when we started it, everything needed to be a manor, and that's how
Yeah.
it got elevated in that way.
Yeah, and I read 220 acres. Is that still the case? Was it always that way? Or it's a big old plot.
Well, but initially we didn't buy all that land. Initially, although that was for sale, we just bought lot one, which was the buildings. Over the years, we've managed to pick it up and acquire it, and we've got a substantial part of what was a much bigger farm back now. But we're very lucky to have those acres. It's been a real asset to us, much more than we knew when we bought it.
Particularly at the moment, I imagine you can still take quite a long walk, even though you're COVID locked up.
Well, yeah, you can, and actually, we've got a lot of pleasure from rewilding that land. And we bought it; it was very over farmed. It was at a kind of agricultural wasteland, and we've got a couple of people on the team who are really, a couple of our gardeners who are really passionate about restoring it and rewilding it. And we've let it go is one way of putting it, but it's attracting all sorts of amazing wildlife and rare butterflies and rare plants, and it's been a real pleasure to us and the team, and our guests love it. And it's a very big part of what we do at Calcot. This whole idea of getting back to nature. It's been a real bonus to us.
That's interesting. Yeah, so I hadn't picked that up. So where's the motivation for that then, for rewilding?
Well, I think it really came from we didn't set out to buy that land. What we needed was the farmyard that was attached to it. We needed that to convert one of our historic barns into something useful for the hotel and to add car parking. So we had to buy the farmyard, and they'd only sell us the farmyard if we bought the land, which is 240 acres. And as I said, when we acquired it, it was an agricultural desert. We didn't want to farm it. We didn't want to become farmers. So it was a kind of natural move to say, well, if we let this go a little bit and let it go wild and maybe graze a little bit, what's going to happen to it? And as I say, we have a guard on the team who was really inspired by that and has taken great pleasure from being its guardian. And it's really reaped some rewards. But it's happened very slowly over time. It hasn't been an instant plan of let's do this next year. It's just been a very, very slow back to nature. But our guests love it now. It's a wonderful place to walk and feel nature. So we're very proud of it, actually.
Amazing. I love that. I've been, I don't know, partly through that. I think we have a responsibility being involved in the world of food and drink, certainly through the restaurant side, but to understand where food comes from and to understand the sort of the impact of agriculture, I suppose, and where we can be part of the solution to that and everything we're now learning. I think rewilding and paying back, I suppose, some of that responsibility is such an important thing that we should be doing, but all too often isn't recognised. So well done.
Yeah, and I think it's also, it's part of the experience. I think, part of one of the cornerstones of Calcot, if you like, is this feeling of rejuvenation when you come and stay with us, and whether that be using the spa or having some time with your kids or without your kids if they're in the creche, or this having some me time is a big part of it, and being able to go and walk in beautiful countryside is very much part of why people want to escape the city and have a few days of rejuvenation. So it's very important to the whole experience of visiting Calcot.
Amazing. Well, if you get time, go back and listen. I did a podcast with the Ecological Land Trust. So if there's ever any interest in allowing a little pocket of that, because a lot of access to farming is prohibitive to so many of these new sort of small scale mini producers, I suppose, who want to farm the land in an ecological and sustainable way, but in essence, can't afford to buy a couple hundred acres. So they work with tenants who just sort of want 5 acres at a time. But it's a nice idea of allowing some farming to happen, but very much at the heart of it about ecological sort of approach and rewilding. So go and have a listen if you get a chance. There's a plug for another episode.
I will. Thanks.
Okay, so interested a little bit just into how this started. I've got lots to talk about, but in the early days, am I right in saying this sort of started off as a family concern? Did you take over from your dad? Is that right?
Yes, it did. Yeah, my father was a trained hotelier, but he moved quite quickly from his Swiss hotel training into industrial catering. In fact, he was the catering advisor for BP. But I grew up amongst a passion for hotels. Wherever we went, we'd visit or pop in and see a hotel. If we were in London for the theatre, we'd always go and see the new opening. And I just developed this huge passion for hotels. And I think as a kid, I used to play hotels. That's how it started. And so it was kind of inevitable that I'd want to do it. I'd done a hotel training. I'd been to Oxford Brookes, or Oxford Polytechnic as it was in those days, and learned about hotels. I'd spent some time working for David Levin at the Capitol Hotel in London on a management training program, and spent time on the front step as a porter, and in the kitchens and in the bar and so on, and learnt from that master quite a lot of London hotel keeping. But London wasn't for me. I had this passion which really started at college for the idea of picking up a building and repurposing it and changing it and making something wonderful from it. I did various projects actually when I was at school. I remember doing a project to convert my old school into a hotel, and went into it in enormous detail, including kitchen plans and full architect's plans and full marketing plans, etc., etc. And I understand it fell into the hands of a parent at one stage who wrote to the headmaster in disgust that they would consider converting the school. But that was always my passion. And when my father had the opportunity for an early retirement package, he said, "What I want to do now is fulfill my dream and make a hotel." It leapt at me, and I thought, well, this is a wonderful, wonderful shot, and I've got to be involved in this. And we set out to find something suitable, and stumbled across Calcot, which was at the time quite a small farmhouse, 4 bedrooms, but surrounded by these unconverted barns and stables, some with roofs, some without, all covered in rambling roses. And it was just the most romantic and exciting proposition to think what we could do with all these spaces, and how we could make something very special. So we fell for that, and we bought it in 1984. Looking back, my father's no longer with us, unfortunately, so I don't have this discussion with him. But looking back now, it felt like we did this in amidst huge naivety. We had no planning permission. We didn't really have the funds. My father sold his family house, and my grandmother sold her house too and came to live with us. But we hadn't got the borrowing arranged. I don't think we had a proper business plan. We had some vision and we had some ideas, but I don't think we had the kind of business plans that we do these days. We just wanted to do it, and my sister came to work for us too, and her husband, who was a bit of a builder, and we spent a glorious 12 months converting it, and opened a year later with 7 bedrooms, all in the main house, which we done on a shoestring, really. But we had remarkable success considering we had no business plan. And I think we established, quite a good hotel. We seemed to win lots of awards, which was great. We got busy quite quickly. And that's really how it started in 1984.
Yeah, amazing. That's great. Nice story. And I think you need that naivety, because I think if you did know, probably what you know now, and you realise how expensive it is to kind of develop and create these things, you'd probably been scared to death. But sometimes, ignorance is bliss, isn't it? And you can do it on a limited funds if you don't know you need more, basically. So, yeah.
Yes, I mean, what I don't know is how much stress this gave my poor old father. I mean, I was in my early 20s at the time, and probably had a right to be naive.
Yeah.
I've passed the age where he was in life when he did this, and I thought, that's something I would want to take on. So I'm full of admiration that he had the foresight and the bravery to give up a very comfortable existence and put everything on the line. I think I just came along for the ride, and I think I was very lucky to have that opportunity.
Yeah, amazing. That's great. So, was it, when you first saw it and in those early days, did any part of you, kind of, could you visualize what it has now become, or did this very much, evolve in your head?
Um, that's a very good question. I don't think, I think the answer to that is probably no. I don't think I ever dreamed it would be the size and scale that it is now. I think our dreams were step by step, and we dreamt of being able to convert the next building, um, and one at a time. And that's exactly how it grew. It was one at a time. It wasn't an easy ride, I have to stress. We started life with a bank loan, or it wasn't even a bank, it was a merchant bank at the time, which was somewhere around 18%. Um, and that was around our necks from day one. And within 4 or 5 years, we're into the kind of Gulf War crisis and the collapse of the American market, which was quite important to us at the time. And after some initial success, we had a fairly rough ride. Um, and I spent a very, very difficult couple of years trying to find a solution for this, which involved talking to lots of possible investors and so on and so forth. And actually, really at the 11 and a half hour, a lovely customer, a gentleman called Michael Stone, who'd been using the hotel for some time, stepped up and said, "Look, I hadn't realised you were going through all this. I can't bear it. I love this hotel. I'd love to get involved. I will buy it from your parents if you will, allow me to, if I would stay on and run it for you." Um, he said, "I don't want to get involved. If I get involved, that's the day I want out. But if you're happy to take it on and work with me, I'd love to partner you and take this forward." And that was really what began the next chapter, which led to our subsequent expansion.
Yeah, amazing. That's I don't know. It feels like the stars were aligned to make that happen. I guess because presumably without that, well, you say it was 11th and a half hour. Was it very much one of the options on the table was that you were going to have to sell up and get out? Was it?
Oh, absolutely, most definitely. We'd even talked to administrators. We were absolutely against the wall, and this was our last way out. And actually, of all the solutions I'd looked at along the way, it was probably the best. I don't think I knew it at the time. I think at the time it was the only option on the table. But I've enjoyed a wonderful partnership with the Stone family. Michael Stone is unfortunately no longer with us, but he asked me to be chairman of the company, a few years before he left us, and I now work with his son, in fact, two sons and a daughter who sit on my board, and it's been a wonderful relationship that's endured for a couple of decades now, and it's allowed the company to thrive as it has.
That's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, because all too often these things, that's not how they pan out. Particularly if he's got his own kids and they've bought it, you can sort of see how that they end up running the business. So it's great that you've managed to work sort of symbiotically over all that time and create what you've created. So yeah, congratulations again. I suppose. Did you imagine at that time that you would be here because it's getting on towards 30 years or something you've been there now, isn't it? Did you think you would stay in that location and do this for that long, or is it just because you've been loving the journey?
Yeah, I think no, I probably didn't actually. If I'm honest with you, when I started, I thought this is a great thing to be doing. I know I was in my early 20s. Um, I don't think at that stage you look that far into the future. You don't, and you certainly don't imagine yourself in one place. So no, I don't think I did. I think I thought this is going to be a great thing to do. Let's make a success of this, and then move on. Um, I think as events transpired, when things became tough, any thought of that disappeared, and I was just, there was no way I could have left the business anyway. So I don't think thoughts whether I wanted to ever entered my head. I just became part of me, and we needed to put our heads down and survive that crisis. And then, having moved forward into chapter two with these partners, it was time to sketch out a whole new life trajectory, if you like. And I knew I had the backing and capability to really make something of the company and take it into the realms of of, of plans where we'd never even thought.
Mm. And was Michael very much aware of that when you had those sort of initial negotiations? It was partly sort of rescuing the existing business and a hotel he loved, but was it very much sort of eyes wide open about this is what this could become, but it's going to require a significant level investment over a period of time, or was it case at that point was it kind of thinking this is going to stay as is, or was it clearly on a trajectory for to be more?
I think Michael and I knew that things had to change. Although the hotel had been very successful, uh, uh, we'd probably got a bit misled. We stumbled across this thing called a Michelin star at some stage in our first few years, and it was probably the one of the worst things that happened to us, because it took us away from our real core of what we were all about, and all of a sudden it all became about chasing these accolades, and I see so many other hotels going down this route, and I think just don't do it. You just don't need to go there. But we did, and it probably took us into realms of pretension, if I'm honest. And I think we knew we had to change, and this was an opportunity to do so. And I think Michael knew that as well. So change was definitely on the cards. I don't think he'd have got involved if he knew I didn't want that change. Um, I don't think he ever felt he would end up investing what he did along the lines. Hotels are huge on capital. The depth of capital you need is just massive, and um, we had some great ideas along the way, and we had some possibilities for expansion, which felt unignorable. So Michael probably did invest more than he thought he would ever do at the very beginning. But I think he loved it. I think he loved the journey, and he got more and more passionate about this world of hotels, which was a new one to him. And
Yeah.
the family who were still involved have the same passion. Actually, they absolutely adore hotels and everything about them, and have loved the association.
Amazing. Yeah, it's interesting. I've got so just to go back to the Michelin star. Were you sort of interested in that because you thought that it would, it was a good sort of bedrock, I suppose, for the business. If you had a Michelin star, it would make you busier, or was it a sort of a pride thing where you just really wanted one?
No, we didn't want one. We didn't want one, but we stumbled on a great chef, a lovely guy actually, a guy called Ray Farthing, who actually we loved and enjoyed working with. At the time, he was a sous chef at the castle at Taunton, and he came in to be head chef, and he was so much better than we realised. And we never said to him, "Look, go and get a Michelin star." And I think actually he was as surprised as we were when we opened the guide one day, and therefore we had it. And at that point, it was terrific. It was what happened in the years after that, and absolutely no fault of Ray's. He was just doing a great job, but it does grab you, and you're so terrified of losing it. You're so terrified of the reputational damage of losing it that it starts to drive you, and you lose contact with actually what your customers want. You just think, what have you got to do to retain it? And for a small hotel with limited resources, that can be quite dangerous. And you find yourself investing in sizes of kitchens and sizes of teams, and then limiting your product, limiting your menus, limiting your choice, which isn't what your customers want. It's just what the kitchen need in order to keep this level of cuisine, which we didn't need. And it's over egged, the fact that you have to have this wonderful gastronomy breaking restaurant in order to be successful in our sector. I really don't think you do, and we didn't in those days, but we just didn't realize it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think, like you say, it's a common trajectory, and I've had this conversation a lot of times with my chefs over the years. Not even necessarily where they're going for Michelin, but it's understanding how do you quantify success, really, isn't it? And for me, I kept saying, look, success for me is a busy restaurant, it's happy customers, it's good reviews, and the external accreditation, isn't what I'm motivated by. But I've had a number of chefs who've come in who very much have been wanting that external accreditation, and there's been some challenging times sometimes to get them to understand that customer demand and what the customer will pay for has to be the most important thing from a business perspective, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think 10 years ago it was really hard to employ a chef if you didn't say to the chef, "Look, I want these things out of my kitchen." If you didn't want these things, then they probably weren't interested. Fortunately, that's changed, and we now employ a wonderful chef in Richard Davis, who's had all those accolades. He's been there and got that, and he's had the stars, and actually he's come away from that now, and like so many chefs, and says, "No, look, I just want to cook. I just want to cook great food, and I don't need to be boxed in by that." And I think there are more and more chefs out there who feel that way, and as a result, I think restaurants have got better and food has got better, uh, and that's a really positive thing.
Yeah, no, agreed. So you then went on this sort of fairly long journey, I think between 1992 and I think you acquired the sort of the second building in 2009. What was going on in that time period? What were the sort of key decisions that you made during that time that really sort of transformed the business and built the reputation that you now have?
Sure. Well, we built Calcot slowly, organically, bit by bit. It was 3 rooms at a time. There were a couple of big jumps when we built. And one of the first things we did actually, in order to change the direction of the hotel, was to build this second restaurant, which we called the Gumstall Inn. Um, that was quite a big step, but that was a repositioning step really. We opened a casual restaurant alongside a country house hotel, which in those days was unheard of, and I think we were probably one of the first people into the casual dining market in that respect. And that was a success, a huge success from day one, and drove the reinvention and the repositioning of the hotel and its atmosphere. We also, as another big step, built a spa, a big spa with a membership, which was hugely successful. And the rooms built up very slowly, up to 35 bedrooms. And at that point, we thought we'd probably hit certainly the first ceiling in the expansion of Calcot. And we started to think about a second site. I think I was very keen to try and replicate the model, which was based on this great informality, which welcomed families and was very unpretentious and very welcoming and very fresh. And we tried to look for a site where we could replicate that, and just couldn't find one. We couldn't find one where the numbers stacked up. The size of investment needed to create that model from scratch, as opposed to bit by bit, 3 rooms at a time, was just out of our reach, and we couldn't find the right site. At one stage, probably later on, actually, we did couple up with an investment partner, and actually we looked at the luxury house hotels as they came out of Von Essen, and we put in good bids for 3 of the hotels, but Nigel Chapman, who ended up reacquiring luxury family hotels, was prepared to buy a larger part of the stable, and we didn't want to go there. So that was the closest we came to replicating the Calcot model. But then along the way, things happened which really made us change our strategy, and we came across 2 opportunities in the region, being Barnsley House and Painswick, and they were both very close to Calcot. And we saw an opportunity to pick up smaller hotels and really run them from a central base as kind of almost like satellite hotels around a mothership. They were both hotels where we could see big opportunity. We thought they could be repositioned, and we thought we had some skill in that area and could make a difference. And that led us really to the model we have now, which is very much a mothership with some very successful and hotels operating with a lot of central administration control.
That's really interesting. So this is one of my sort of things I was looking forward to chatting to you about, because certainly chatting to Robin Hudson at the Pig and to Nicholas at Congham, and I suppose just seeing the changing trends, maybe back in Hotel de Van's early days, some of the hotels were a lot smaller, but I guess as wage costs have gone up and centralized costs, minimum wage, pensions, all that kind of stuff, we've seen this need, at what point does a hotel become viable or not viable? And it seemed to sort of commonly coming up was a minimum of sort of 30, 35 rooms to make it work. So I was interested that, if you found the right model, but because by having a number of places close enough that you can run them as a satellite with a central team, that puts you in quite an interesting niche, really, because most people with 16-room hotels are probably coming out of the market because they can't make them work anymore. Do you feel like maybe you're in a niche that you're uniquely well placed to deliver?
To a certain extent, it's a viable model, and so the hotels of that size wouldn't be viable if they weren't all in close proximity and operating in this kind of satellite way, unless they are run, I think, by owner managers who are putting all their hours into the business. Having said that, there's no question about it. It's a lot easier to run a hotel successfully and profitably if it's got between 25 and 35 bedrooms. So I wouldn't disagree with those claims that both Robin and Nicholas have made. 30 to 35 is the sweet spot, and very much easier. Our other hotels are clearly not as profitable, but I think the bigger thing is that they're vulnerable. So if we have something difficult which hits us, be it a shutdown because we found a bit of asbestos in the kitchen, or we've got to have some disruption because we've got to repair a roof, or a big event in the locality is cancelled. We won't even go there with COVID, but any of these type of interruptions can really eat up a very limited profit margin, and no amount of satelliting or central administration will help protect the profitability in those kind of circumstances. So they don't have as much fat, but if everything is running fine, if we don't have those kind of interruptions, and we have a good year without any difficult things happening, then yes, those smaller hotels can be profitable. Barnsley particularly, actually, although it's only got 18 bedrooms, it's got a very high room rate there. The rooms are really, really absolutely beautiful and of a very, very good size. And we can achieve a high room rate there, which makes it a very profitable model.
So what's the motivation then to add those kinds of businesses which aren't as easy or as viable? If you were just a bean counter and you had your spreadsheet in front of you, you might avoid them. Are you motivated by something that's not just profit?
Well, I think also we shouldn't let go of the fact that we've built up a brand here. We've built a bit of a brand which does help. By having a collection of hotels, they're all aimed at a very slightly different market. Although there's a lot of crossover between them, we like to think that they're aimed at the same people at a different stage in their lives. And there's a lot of kind of red threads which go through them, which give it commonality. They are all slightly different. They're all slightly different. They all have their own proposition. So we think we've created a little bit of a brand, perhaps with a small b, which adds a certain sales value. And by that, I don't mean resale value. I mean, it makes it easier to sell rooms into them because they're all drawing off this kind of central brand presence. So I think that's helped, and we wouldn't necessarily have had that if we hadn't expanded in the way we've done. So I think that's one part of it. I guess if I was, or if we as a company were all about bean counters, and maybe if we had property and asset managers behind us, then yeah, we'd probably throw our hands up and say this isn't the most profitable model. But we're passionate about hotels, and that drives us. We're passionate about hotels. We love making them better. We are so drawn into the idea of taking a hotel that is struggling and throwing something around it which makes it successful and repositioning it, and we get so excited about it. It's what makes us tick. We have to make a proper return on our investment, don't get me wrong. We have to make a very viable profit. We don't have backing behind us which doesn't need that return on capital. It does, but we're perhaps able to only do the things that turn us on and we love to do, and to restrict us to that and not just maximize our bean counting.
I love that because without people like you and lots of others who love this sector, then those kind of smaller borderline viability from a big player perspective. I was chatting to a hotel reseller the other day, and he was laughing when I said that 35 rooms was a sweet spot because his viability was more like sort of 200 rooms, and I'm less interested in the big sort of multinational players, I suppose, who have such huge amounts of investment behind them and do become bean counters. And I love these, this is why this is called the humans of hospitality. I love these quirky sort of independent stories. It's a difficult sector. It's all consuming. It's very much got to be a lifestyle. Some of the profitability sometimes in the smaller ones can be marginal. Why is it that you love it so much, this sector?
Well, I think I think it's the creativity, actually. It's the creativity and the connection with humanity, and it's the creativity. I was never drawn into the kind of big international career line, or even the city corporations. I needed to have the ability to have a vision, see something that could be done, have the ability to create it, in a reasonable time frame, and get my pleasure from seeing how it's been created. I think that's the first part, and I think it's a sector where you can do that. The bigger you get and the more corporate you get, the harder it is to do that. So that's probably the first thing, and the second thing I think is the human connection. We are so much about people. I know it sounds like a cliche, but the bigger organisations perhaps can't afford to be so much about people. They need to be about the beans first, and the interest in the people will only come because perhaps that brings more beans. We are really connected to our teams. We're so reliant upon our teams. And therefore, we get huge reward and huge pleasure from keeping our teams happy and motivated and learning and improving and loyal. And we're also connected to our clients. We see our clients every day. We get to know them. We get pleasure when they come back and see us. And it's the sweet spot, this sector. It's the sweet spot where you have the ability to create hotels and drive hotels and be part of a hotel business, but you also remain connected with people. And I think that's what makes the sector so attractive.
Yeah, great. Yeah, no, I share all of that. I'm talking about the creativity side, which I think we are uniquely placed, I suppose. Even if you think of our houses maybe start to reflect our businesses because we see design in a different way. Your venues look like they've got a sort of beautiful mix of classic and modern styles, sort of quite rich furnishings, but they look like they've got the sort of right level of informality and stay relaxed. Does that come from you? Have you got an eye for detail in that creative side, or have you worked with a sort of particular designers over the years?
No, I can't say it comes from me. I think I've got the ability, like so many people, to see what I like and what I don't like, but I don't really have the ability to say this is how we achieve it. I think my input, my vision, has been about what we need to achieve, the kind of feel and look and parameters of how we go there, levels of formality and levels of fussiness and so on and so forth. We're lucky. One of Michael's daughters, Nikki Farquhar, has a great ability and passion for interior design. She's got a completely natural ability to interpret what's needed and get it right. And Nikki became involved took over the interior design, I suppose, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And gradually she's worked through it and put a common style over it. And it's a style that works so well for us. It absolutely interprets where we need to be in the marketplace. And she just understands that and she just gets it. Latterly, she's not quite so involved, but we have two associates of her, great friends of hers who worked with her in the early years. Kathy and Caroline, and they've taken that mantle on, and they understand where we're going for, and we've managed to have this central feel of design, which we feel helps deliver the product we're after.
And what is that? You mentioned the sort of the differences, I suppose, and the same aspect of those different businesses and their different markets. Well, what is that common DNA that runs through all of them? And this idea, I suppose, that some people are maybe coming at a certain time of their life with a young family, but maybe coming back once the kids have moved out, and maybe it's more about the sort of food and drink and being a bit more romantic. What is it that the customer would notice is riddled through those different businesses that brings them together?
Yeah, I think it broadly comes under the term of hospitality. We have a word which we've cloned from that, which we call hospitotally, and it's hospitality, but with a bit more around it, which actually includes the style of the food and the drink. It includes a term we use a lot called keeping it real. It wraps up all these things, but it's really a sense of hospitality. It's a sense of welcome. A sense of care, a caring feeling that we portray. Our hospitality is really based upon the ability to read what it is our guests in our house are looking for, and to a degree amend what we're doing to meet that. And we're very keen about that. We see there is a danger with informality. You see it so often that where businesses are very informal and don't rely upon scripts and bows and scrapes and ways of doing things, but try to leave their teams to do what comes naturally to them. but you think there's a great danger they can sometimes become too cool for their own good. And the staff can take on this kind of aloof approach, which says, this is what we do. If you like it, that's great. If not, go and stay somewhere else. And we're very awake to that. And we try very much to assess people when they arrive and work out whether they want fast, whether they don't want fast, whether they want to be quick, whether they want to take time, whether they're stressed, whether they're not, and try to adapt the way we work to suit that need. And I think we've built up a whole spirit of hospitality and a set of rules around that.
Yeah, I love that hospitality. It's a great way of putting it. It's that sort of so many details that make up great hospitality, I suppose. Do you find that you need to recruit a different type of person in the different venues, or can you cross train people across the group pretty well?
That's interesting. One of the benefits of having a group, of course, or a small group, a collection we like to call it, is that we can offer development opportunities. So people have got the ability to move through the group, and we've got some notable success stories there of people who have moved very successfully through the hotels and risen and grown their careers, and that's a really rewarding thing for us to be able to offer. Very often we find that there isn't that there's actually such a loyalty to the hotel that they are working in that there isn't actually a desire to cross over, and each hotel has built up its own personality and character. A lot of that actually comes from the general manager or the hotel director or whoever is in charge. They set a certain aura and a certain personality. And that does drive a personality which doesn't necessarily suit everybody. So there are differences. There are differences in the type and style of people who work in each of the hotels. And we recognise that, and we like it. We're very strong. We're very strong on the fact we're a collection, we're not a group, and we allow each hotel to have its own personality and its own character. In fact, we encourage it. We want it to develop, and if we're going to do that, we can't expect each hotel to be the right place for each person, and some suit some and some suit others.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I love that. Funny enough, I've got a few venues of my own, and it's interesting to see the different person. I used to sort of insist on cross training people and think it'd be really good. You go and work in this one, you go and work in that one, and actually, same thing over time. They're sort of friendly competition between each other, but the teams do really gel. And you're absolutely right. The different GMs in those business, you can sort of see who's going to work best. And it's not that one is better or worse; they're just different, and they develop their own personalities. So, yeah, I share that. And sometimes you just learn these things as time goes on, I guess. I'm keen. So great, really, lovely to hear about your specific venues. I'm keen to get your thoughts on the broader industry. So one of the other areas that I focus on quite a lot in this conversation is often around the more sort of casual dining sector. And certainly in that world, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, there were certain issues that were around. So there was possibly an oversupply in the markets. Rents were high. There was a lot of this sort of venture capitalist rollout of the same sort of concepts on every high street corner. And it became one of the motivations as to why I sort of launched this podcast, was to get people to understand the difference between the independent sector and the corporate sector. I'm probably less au fait with the sort of, the country hotels or the luxury hotel market. Was there anything that was going on? What was the picture in the world of luxury country hotels? Was it looking pretty positive? Was everything rosy, or were there some challenges that were going on pre-COVID? We'll come to COVID in a minute.
There were challenges, and we've got to be very careful not to forget those challenges, because we will get through COVID and we'll be back with those very same challenges, and it's important that we don't lose sight of that. The principal challenge, of course, was recruitment and getting the right people to run our businesses, and that's going to be even harder when we come out of this, because of Brexit and so on. So that is a huge challenge, and trying to find people of the right caliber who are prepared to work the kind of hours, who have the vocational draw towards hospitality, is tough, and will become tougher. We were finding increasingly a need to grow our own and bring in people who may not be suitable initially, and do our best to convert them to the way we work and to grow our own. But that was a real challenge. And as I'm sure you're aware, because I know you're in the sector, getting the right people to come and cook at the right level was equally hard. So that is a problem we mustn't forget, because it's here to stay, and will come back at us.
Mm. So,
And
why is it so difficult, and what do you think we can, or what are you doing about that?
sure. Well, I think as to why it's so difficult, I think the industry has had a bad reputation. Um, I think actually there could be a really positive thing that comes out of COVID, if I dare use that word, positive, out of COVID, without sounding glib. But I think there is a new love for the industry. I think that could be a benefit that comes out of it. Thanks to the great work of Kate Nichols and others, the industry has been painted in a great light. Um, and I think people see its value and its worth in a way that they didn't before. So maybe that'll help us a bit. But we have this European problem and this inability to bring in people from Europe, which is going to harm us. I mean, the only solution here, and we all know it, is to train and grow, and of course at the same time to improve the reputation of the industry. I think we've made great strides, and by we I mean as an industry. I think we've made great strides in that direction, and they're continuing to do so. It's just come a little bit late. And we've got a lot of catching up to do, and there's a lot of work to do in that area. But things like apprenticeships and internal training schemes, and a focus on development, a focus on HR, paying better, work-life balance, flexible rotas. I love the work that Sally Beck is doing with the hotel charter, hoteliers charter, hospitality charter. I think it's exactly what was needed. It was needed 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But we need to drive that. We need to really all buy into that and latch onto it and drive it and make it happen. And only by doing that, and only by making all those things listed in that charter, can we amend the reputation industry and draw people back into it. It's going to take a long time, but we need to be on it absolutely straight away and now. And I think Sally's made a huge step in that direction.
Funny enough, Sally's been on the podcast. So in the show notes to this episode, for anybody listening, I will put up the link through to that episode where we chat about that charter in a little bit more detail, so people can have a listen. What do you think the biggest opportunities, coming out of COVID? We'll talk about the threats in a minute, but what do you think the biggest opportunities over the next couple of years are for this sector? Then, do you speaking about the good that might come off the back of COVID and riding that wave of positivity for our sector, do you see some good opportunities?
Well, clearly in the short term, I think that there will be huge opportunities because our beloved public have been starved of what we provide, which is this togetherness, families getting together and multi-generations getting together and parties and getting away from things and having taken time to rebuild ourselves and me time. All this kind of thing has not been available to us. So I think we can expect a little mini boom once we get out of it, and I'm sure we're all acutely aware of that. Going forward, I think there is. I think it's been there for a while, but I think this whole need for me time and time to focus on yourself, well-being and mindfulness, I think all these things have become ever so more important as we've realized the fragility of our lives and how we need to focus on ourselves a little bit and others and our families. And I think it's only accelerated that process. And I think as long as hotels focus on that and focus on the whole kind of experience and restorative and learning side of getting away and staying in hotels and having these breaks, I think the future is very bright, and many of our hotels do that, and it's certainly where we're going to be focusing. Walking gently. I think our hotels have to walk gently on the earth, and those things are so acutely in people's minds now. As long as we do that, I think the opportunities are great. I think. Actually, I remember after the crash of the 80s, and I guess I'm showing my age when I talk about this, but I remember after the crash of the 80s, and we had that dreadful recession. I think what came out of that was this nouvelle cuisine thing that came out of that, and it was this feeling of we've got to strip away anything that's big and grand, and come back to simplicity. And I think that's going to come out of this too. I think we're going to come back to what's real, and I think the excesses of 5-star, all the baloney that goes with 5 stars and gastronomy and all the kind of excesses and wastefulness that went with hyper luxury will not be in demand. And there's always going to be room, don't get me wrong, always be room for the fantastic and beautiful hotels I admire so much, like the Manoir, but there'll be less and less of them. And too many hotels aim at that and think it's the only way to make a success in this industry, and it's not. And I think going forward, it'll be even less. We need to get back to what people are looking for, to give themselves some me time and some restoration.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's some great ideas in there. How do you turn that sort of concept of fragility and time, I suppose, how do you turn that into a tangible thing? What are you doing? What are you offering physically in the hotels to sort of, I suppose, to fulfill that need from people?
Well, of course, things like spas will help, and having space so people can walk will help. But I think it's more about the style of hospitality we give and the way we look after people, the way we allow them to relax immediately, the way we allow them to have me time, the way we give them space, the way we don't creep around them all the time. We don't make them dress up. We don't make them follow rules. So allowing people to have time to think about themselves, allowing them to come away with their family, have lovely times with the children, and not feel they've got to be careful of the rules. Provide the ability to look after those children for a while in our creche, so they can go and have treatments and relax in the spa just for a while. Um, I think these things are important. We're focusing a lot on experiences. We're trying to create events which involve a bit of learning, because we think people want to learn, but they want to go away having improved themselves from a stay, not just chill out and relax. They want to leave having improved themselves. So we're thinking about events and how we pull that together, and offering experiences which involve the countryside and involve restoration. Yoga is big. Yoga is there's so much demand for yoga, which tells a whole story in itself. And I think spas are important, perhaps not of the size of Calcots. They don't all need to be that big, but I think somewhere to really feel you've got some me time and have treatments and loll in the hot pool. I think these are really, really important going forward.
Yeah, sounds awesome. I'm all the more envious that I'm not actually there in person, making the most of your facilities. So here we are. We're sort of, we're in another lockdown. It looks like it's going to be a pretty lengthy one. We're pinning all of our hopes on the vaccination. What do you think the biggest risk? We're trying, I suppose, to get ourselves to a point of being able to bounce back and being able to bounce back fast. It feels like we sort of moved from having the ear of government sort of pretty strongly back in those early days, pre eat out to help out. But most people I'm speaking to sort of feel that sort of fell off a cliff at the end of that scheme, and we've been somewhat neglected over the winter months. What do you think the biggest risks are, probably, in 2021 to hospitality making the sort of bounce back that it needs to and it should do?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think really, I'm not sure that I follow the central line. Is I do think that government support has been pretty good, actually. I go back to that first lockdown, and when that first announcement came in my mind, and the sheer terror and panic when we realised we're going to have to close all the hotels, and that was announced before we'd been given any notification of furlough or freezing of business rates, or the VAT rate being reduced, etc. The sheer terror about how we would survive, and actually a feeling we wouldn't survive. And I think if you go back to that position and then look at how long we've had to be closed, and how the damage of that has been mitigated to a certain extent by the government support, I think they haven't done a terrible job. This is a devastating disease. It's something that's completely, it's unpredictable. It's unprecedented. It's really clever. You don't know where it is. You know where it's going next. And we've given the government the most impossible task, we've asked them to make the most impossible decisions on our behalf. And they haven't got them all right. And there's no doubt about it that our industry has suffered from bad decisions. I'm absolutely with that. I mean, some of the naivety around the 10 o'clock lockdown, etc., has been devastating and got us nowhere. And there's no doubt about it that we had made our hotels very safe. They were much safer than that was seen. But this disease is all about human contact, and if you look at where we are now, that contact had to be reduced. And I guess with that, I'm not really a lockdown denialist, like I've heard other people say. I think we had to do this, and we had to take this on the chin to a certain extent. Um, I feel for others in sectors that have been more vulnerable to this. I recognise that we're in a very fortunate position. I mean, having said fortunate, we've taken on massive loans to get through this. Um, those loans don't put us at risk, and I recognise we're in a very fortunate position. They completely screw up any kind of future plans for us, and they completely change any kind of strategy going forward, because we've got some very big loans around our neck, but they haven't threatened our existence. And I know for some they have. Those sectors in particular are going to need huge support. And we need to make sure that government don't lose sight of that. And I think Kate Nichols is doing a fantastic job in doing that. I don't know where we'd be without Kate Nichols and all she's done. I also think this campaign to get a minister around the table, seat at the table that Robin and his gang have promoted is so important and so needed. We need better understanding at government so that they understand the nuances of the trade. I think if there is a problem in government, it's not understanding the different sectors. We tend to get bunged together into one big sector called hospitality, and that isn't right and has led to the bad decisions. They need to understand the nuances. They need to understand the vulnerability. They need to understand the huge impact that they have on people's lives, and the kind of mental health side of that. So we need government to understand that and be able to react to that. A minister around the table would make a big difference for that. That support's just got to continue. I think if we can extend furlough, if we can be really helpful on the VAT for some time to come, to allow those businesses to recover and to employ the people that they need to employ, it could make a huge difference to the recovery of the economy as a whole.
Yeah. No, I think there's some good points, and I share your sort of fairly, sort of rational, objective perspective of it's a shitty situation, and yeah, God, I wouldn't want to be in the job of central government at all trying to help. I do think that with 70% of the sector not qualifying for those initial 25k grants because of the rateable value scenario, and I think some of the headlines around the support, furlough is spoken about, but the recognition, and maybe it is in the restaurant sector where possibly they don't have the same assets to leverage loans. It's kind of like, furlough is fundamentally costing those companies quite a lot of money at the moment. And if they can't access the loans at a decent rate because they don't have the assets to back it up, then at least releasing the grant support, to say, look, even the ones above 51k, because most restaurants on any high street would have had a rateable value, which means they got £0. So all they've actually qualified for so far from a grant perspective is possibly the sort of 3k in November, and then the furlough where the money goes to the team and they are contributing towards it. Whatever the case, I think the key thing is recognizing probably that, to be given time to rebuild. I think there must be a lot of hospitality businesses at the moment thinking, my goodness, we've got to get through the next 90 days probably to get through till spring before we can rebound. If they had the confidence to know that things like the VAT cut would be extended, to know that business rates relief would be extended, at least then they have hopefully the confidence to keep their teams employed, because the worry at the moment must be, how many people will go, look, I don't need those people for the next 90 days, painful though it may be. They're costing me, a significant amount of money in pension and NI and holiday contributions, even with furlough, and they end up letting them go. But I think if we can dangle that carrot and say, look, the support won't be cut off in March as it's supposed to be, it will be extended for the full sort of financial year, I think that would make a big difference. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely do. You put it very well, Mark. That's absolutely. But I think inherent in what you say is this need to understand the different sectors, and I think that's been missed entirely. And you're absolutely right when you point out that the restaurant trade have been affected in a completely different way from the asset-backed hotels, and there is this misunderstanding that hospitality is one industry, and it's not. It's a whole load of very, very different sectors with different needs and different vulnerabilities, and that isn't really recognised, I don't think, in government policy.
Yeah. So we're running out of time. Turning to sort of some of the things that you've already done, I noticed. Did you ever imagine you would be setting up a takeaway food business, Richard?
No, and it's great actually. It's great. It's huge demand for it, which is not surprising.
So Calcot at home this weekend is your first weekend, isn't it? People can come in and they can pre-order food and pick it up. And is this sort of ready-made, or they cook it at home? How does it work?
Yeah, that's not the first week actually. We've been running it. We started in November. In November,
Okay.
lockdown we started it, and we had a huge New Year. We did massive at New Year's Eve through it, and actually we've just launched a new website to support it, which is why it all looks a bit new, and we've changed the menus, etc. So it does look a bit new, but no, it's prepared to a kind of oven ready condition, if you like, in our own kitchens. It's sent out with very attractive and easy to read and easy to do finishing instructions. It's not a pile of ingredients. It's something which needs to be popped into the oven to be finished off, and a sauce which just needs reheating, and some veg which need popping into some hot water. So it's really easy and really quick. And yes, it's proving really, really popular, and it's keeping our teams busy and exercised, and so it's great. I don't know whether it's something we'll continue. I keep being asked, will we continue this when we reopen? And I suspect not. I hope we'll be too busy to accommodate it. But it's been a great thing to do. I have to say, during the first lockdown, the March lockdown, we did the same thing, but we did it for the vulnerable. It was an idea from Richard Davis, our executive chef, to cook for the vulnerable, and they came and did exactly the same thing, but we worked through a local organisation who distributed the food to those people who were shielded and vulnerable. That was equally rewarding. The Stone family were good enough to fund that, and our boys and girls put the time into it, and that was probably more rewarding actually than what we're doing now.
Yeah, amazing. I think so much of the sector, and it's probably one of the reasons why we've come out of this, I think, with I know it's a good PR, but like you say, maybe more recognition than we had historically. Is one, people really, really miss that opportunity to go out and spend some time with family and friends. But two, I think we did stand up, and we've fed hungry school children, we've fed the vulnerable, we've delivered food to hospitals and NHS. I think in hospitality, if you're in it for the right reasons and you love it, it's riddled through your DNA is this sort of this desire to look after other people and make sure that they're well and make them happy. And we've proved that. People who could have been cynical and just gone, look, there's an industry full of venture capitalists, fast growth companies, have seen, my goodness, it can't be about the bean counters, because we've all stood up and said, look, what can we do? How can we help? How can we look after you? Because that's what hospitality is, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually to pick up on that positive, Mark, I've been really excited and pleased to see this kind of collaboration that's built up between suppliers and ourselves. And I've been so impressed by how many of our suppliers put their hands up before we'd even asked them and said, look, we've got a contract with you. Forget about that until you're back trading. We won't even worry about that. And most of those people just came at it without even really asking. And there's just been this general feeling of support. We can get through this together. And that's a really positive thing. And I hope that it's not just between suppliers and ourselves, it's also between our clients. Some of our clients have been so supportive and kind of expressed concern for us, whereas our concern has been that we haven't been able to honour their stay. And the fortitude and commitment and resilience of our teams has just been so extraordinary. The anxiety they've had to deal with themselves has been enormous, and I'm sure it's taken its toll in terms of mental health. But in between times, their fortitude and strength has really knocked me off my stool. And we were very lucky to have 3 great months in the summer, which really saved the business. Really, I mean, those 3 months were very, very lucrative, and our team just came back in, and we were short-staffed because we needed to be, and they just worked so hard, flat out, for 3 months, because they knew we needed to fill the coffers. We didn't even have to ask them; they just got and did it, and it was really, really fantastic to see.
No, I share that 100%, exactly the same, and sort of humbling and very emotional to see both customer support, but to see the flexibility of the teams and what you throw at them. And we're open today and we're closed tomorrow, and even as recently as New Year's Eve, my head chef's in on the 30th prepping all the food, and we hadn't really pushed New Year because there wasn't much of me that thought that we would actually be open for it. But the fact that we didn't get closed down until midnight that day, the chefs had been in, they prepped the food just in case, and then it's kind of like, right, we're shut, what are we going to do with it? And you look at them and you go, God, it'd be easy for them to whinge and moan and stress and curse, and they've been brilliantly supportive and flexible, and certainly reminded me of what a lovely sector it is that we work in, I guess. Speaking of which, looking back over your career, so you've won awards on a personal level, you've won business awards. Is there an award, or is there something that you've done in the business? Is there something you look back on over the last 30 years that always sort of makes you grin and makes you particularly excited and proud to, I suppose, have dedicated a life to hospitality?
Well, awards are great, can't they? The awards make us feel good. They're really they're lovely to have. So I don't want to belittle them, but I really don't think they're the be all and end all. I think I enjoyed my time working for Master Inn Holders. I enjoyed that. I think Master Inn Holders as a group of hoteliers gave us some clout to do that, to be able to actually make a difference. We had a bit of backing behind us and clout. So that was probably a very meaningful part of my career when I chaired that organisation for a year. I think probably the thing I'm most proud of is our association and support with Hospitality Action, which is a charity that is so important. We know how many people we employ in this industry. We know how vulnerable that group is, and HA do a fantastic job in picking up the vulnerable there, and it's only our own industry that will support them. And so, as an organisation, as a group, as a company, we've really got behind that, and we've created events which have become annual events, cycling events, and polo events, which supported that charity, and that's ongoing. And that's probably given me the greatest reward and pleasure of all those things that we've done, and hope to continue to do.
Thank you so much for sparing the time, Richard. Great to hear your journey. Congratulations on all you've achieved. The venues look absolutely stunning. I will come and see you at some point. People who've enjoyed hearing about your story and want to know more, is there a particular social media channel, website, where should people go to either follow you personally or Calcot Collection?
I'm not a lover of it. I'm there somewhere. I'm there on all of them. You can find me somewhere. But Calcot Collection, search Calcot Collection, and you'll be linked into the organisation, and you'll find me there.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck, and I'm sure our paths will cross in the future. And if you're ever in Bournemouth, pop in for a beer on the beach.
I shall do that, Mark. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much for listening. Sorry that in the last few minutes there were some sound elements that were a little less than perfect. I think we'd exhausted the internet connection by the end of our conversation. But I hope you feel inspired by Richard's journey and took away a few nuggets of wisdom. I'll be back next Monday, where, if all goes well, this week I'll have had a chat with Jonathan Neame, Chief Executive of the Shepherd Neame Brewery, and the opportunity to chat to a business that has existed since the year 1698 excites me greatly. But I've not had the conversation yet, so tune back in next week to see what I learn. Cheers.